Welcome everyone to Artgust, a challenge I've set up for myself of posting a different art project every day of the month of August. I've made a list of prompts and you're welcome to follow along too. Just post anything you make based on the list with the hashtag Artgust. I'm excited to see what you create. With that out of the way, let's make something inspired by today's prompt. Reflection. I actually went into today's project wondering if this video might be about how, sometimes art projects just don't work out. And this project did have a few setbacks, but ultimately things ended up working out. The first hurdle to get over was that I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do, but not a good idea of how I was actually going to put it together. I wasn't even sure what exactly I wanted to do for the base shape of the piece, or what materials I was going to use to make it. Luckily, when I brought up the rough idea to my brother, he offered an old warped cutting board to the cause, and the idea for some shelf brackets to attach everything together. He also very kindly cut the backboard for me, because I find using a handsaw to be strangely difficult for some reason. Now, I could tell you where this whole thing is going, but I think I'll leave this project a bit mysterious for now. Feel free to guess what you think the final piece is going to be in the comments. Once the base was made, it was time to add some structural elements. I will let you in that we're going to be using mirrors in this piece, and I want you to look at them from a certain position, so I need an indicator for where to put your eye. An old tape roll and some wooden skewers ended up working as a stand and viewfinder for this purpose. I cut some other skewers at various lengths to act as stands for some items that we'll be adding a bit later as well. Before we get there, let's add some more shape to this thing. I stole some of my brother's aluminum foil, don't tell him, to help bulk up some areas, and then pulled out the foam clay that's been sitting on my shelf for at least 5 years. You might be able to see where this is going. That's right, it was all dried up. Not completely dry, mind you, but definitely not moldable. It just breaks into pieces. I honestly gave up on this project for a little bit at this point and worked on other things while I waited for some more foam clay to arrive in the mail. I also discovered in this time that you can kind of reconstitute foam clay. I took the dry packets of clay that I had, tore the foam up into small pieces, and threw them in a bag with some water for a while. And then I kneaded it all together. Hence why my clay is in a freezer bag. The clay did end up far too wet and runny. If I speed up the footage, you can see it flowing. But it was moldable again. I did still end up using some of the clay that had been ordered because I needed a bit more, and it was a slightly different white color. I tried to put a few bits of it here and there to make the different colors look intentional, but ultimately it wasn't a big deal. This is kind of a messy looking project on purpose anyway. The whole thing was starting to feel a little rock-like, I thought, so I added a few rock-like lumps here and there as well. Okay, the base is done, so now we can move on to the actual reflection part. I used a technique that I discovered a while back for breaking a mirror up into smaller shards, which is putting the glass between 2 sheets of cardboard and hitting it with a hammer. I wanted a bunch of differently sized pieces, so that worked well. I did discover as I started attaching mirror pieces that it was much easier to get them to point where I wanted if I rested them against a mound of clay. So eventually I took a break from trying to attach mirror pieces and just added a bunch of clay to the backboard to dry before continuing. I also ran into some trouble when figuring out what glue to use. Regular super glue was too liquidy, and the Gorilla Glue took too long to dry. I finally ended up using mainly a gel super glue that was a bit thicker and dried quicker. Oh hey, that rhymes. Alright, maybe it's time I actually tell you my plan. I went into this wanting to make it so that a bunch of shards of glass, when looked at from the right spot, reflect a bunch of disparate pieces in an organized way. In this case, I want a bunch of randomly scattered objects of various colors to appear in rainbow order when looked at in the mirror shards. This was not the easiest process. You can see that I'm placing my finger down places. That's to try and pinpoint where a particular mirror shard is pointing, and to make sure that spot is not in any of the other mirror shards, unless the colors match up. It was a lot of slightly moving things so that they'd be caught by one shard and be just out of view of another. That big purple thing? Yeah, that was to block a line of sight on the green and yellow things behind it. Towards the end, I decided to add more tiny shards of mirror pointing outwards in random directions. They don't reflect the colorful items, but they added to the shattered glass look. That was the same sort of vibe I was going for when adding a few pieces of glass to the bottom with all the colorful items as well. I did also try adding some colorful objects to the back wall, but I eventually opted to remove most of them and just add more bits of glass instead. I felt that it took away from the final effect a bit to be able to guess going in what the final effect would be of looking through the viewfinder. Ready to see how it looks? I wasn't sure I'd be able to get it to work, but it does! It looks like a bunch of random things, but when you look through the viewfinder, suddenly everything is in rainbow order, just like I wanted. I have no idea where I'm going to store this thing or what I'm going to do with it after this. This is definitely one of my larger and stranger projects. I'm quite happy with it conceptually though. I think the idea is really fun. I might have to mess around with making it more polished someday. For now though, I'm off to work on my next project. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another video. Bye!